for coming. We're from Mozilla, as you can see at this wonderful orange shirt. I'm Chris Heilmann from England, and I'm working on the developer engagement team. So my job is to translate whatever Mozilla does to non-human beings out there and what developers want to have to the world of Mozilla. And this is my colleague John.
My name's John Hammink, and I've been the lead test engineer on B2G Gecko since last November.
Okay, so I thought I'd bring a test engineer along because if you have detailed questions about it, he's the person that has to fix all these things or finds the bugs about it. So what are we talking about? Yesterday, Telefonica released this website in England, or 2 days ago, about an open web device. And an open web device is what they say is the device the development community was claiming for. Clamoring was probably what they meant with that. But what they wanted to say is that it's unfair that as developers, we have no open source mobile phones. We have a few mobile options. We have an iPhone, which is far, far away from open. Or we have Android, which is tada source. It's not open source. It's like, tada, we've got a new Android. And 2 weeks later, you can actually get the source code and you can start playing with it. But you don't have a chance to actually send things into Android while it's being developed. And with the open web device and with B2G Gecko, we've got a completely open system for the mobile market. So B2G Gecko is what the open web device is built on, and B2G Gecko is what Mozilla is actually doing. So we're not doing any phones, we're not selling any phones, we're not giving out any phones, because we don't want to do that, and we don't have the time to do that and the money to do that. So we just build an operating system, much like the Linux community built an operating system, and Dell and HP and other people sell hardware that Linux runs on. Or if you kill your Mac machine, that's also possible. B2G Gecko is 2 parts. It's Gecko, which is the browser engine that also is under Firefox and is Firefox itself, and it's Gaia, which is the user interface. So Gaia is the interface on top of it, and Gecko is just the things that you don't see at B2G Gecko. And if you can see that as a connection, if you take Gecko apart and the non-visible things in B2G Gecko apart, then under the hood it's gone, which is the same Linux core that Android has, so you can actually flash Android phones with B2G Gecko. So we didn't want to reinvent the core because that was all done for us. What we needed to find was APIs and ways to access the hardware that we did not have before. So that is the Gecko runtime, which is Firefox, and Gaia is an interface on top of it. And as Gaia is the most visible thing, we made this flame. Under the hood, all of it is HTML5. And HTML5, as we know, is not HTML only anymore, but it's HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So the whole interface is written in these technologies, and nothing in there needs another technology. So if I were an API and app developer right now, and I want to get my apps on the mobile phone, I have to either use Java for Android, or I have to use C# for Windows phones, or I have to use Objective-C for iPhones. In our case, we need HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and we can't use things like Adobe Cordova or PhoneGap to turn these into native apps for the other phones as well. So you don't repeat that work. That was the main idea why we chose B2G Gecko to be HTML5.
Basically, at the very basic level, sorry about that. Why is B2G important? Well, to put it simply, we have HTML and 5 and JavaScript as the underlying technologies behind everything related to the future of the web. So the point is that anyone who can develop basically web content can also be developing content for B2G Gecko phone. As we said before, it's created with open technologies. So anyone who's a web developer can get involved in their creation, although browser developers like Mozilla or through open standards organizations like the W3C. And of course, it's created with free technologies. So anyone can use these technologies without having to pay anything both for using the technology as well as developing with it. It's quite literally a write once, deploy anywhere technology in the true sense of the word.
And that's incredibly important because as developers, I should not have to pay for an operating system or a IDE or environment before I actually start building. In this case, you can use Vim, you can use any text editor. You don't have to change your development environment. Whereas when I started working on closed technologies, all of a sudden I had to download this massive build process and this massive IDE that I didn't want to use. And I'm a web developer, I just want to build an app. I know how to build an app, but I didn't want to go through that whole interface of something else. So you have the freedom of keeping your environment, and you have the freedom to build things that are open and can learn from view source like you could with everything else. So this is part of a bigger project that we call the Keynote Java event. And that is that we align all the Mozilla projects to be in one, to speak one voice. So B2G Gecko is the thing that all the Firefox and all the Mozilla products will actually point to. And this B2G Gecko is Firefox itself. We have red apps that we're releasing, and we have a market for that. We're going to come back to that later. And that's also Persona. If you haven't heard about Persona, take a look at that. It's really, really important that we get something like that done, because logging for the web is broken. Passwords and usernames are a very, very bad idea to keep out there. Every few months we have a new hacked website, and people use great passwords like password1. And when you tell them, like, you need an exclamation mark somewhere, it's password1 exclamation mark. So in Persona, we've got a way with need for usernames and passwords, and it's very important to think about that. So the easiest way to actually show you today, or to show you a quick demo, so let's quickly do that. So let's crash my computer here by getting out of Keynote. So as you can see, I've got a system called Gaia Rocking here, which you can download from GitHub. And I do a run here, and then you see wonderful things, which gets everybody excited who works on Linux, lots of moving parts. But as soon as that's done, I have a simulator running and opening here that shows B2G Gecko on my computer. So I can actually test these things on my computer itself without having to flash a phone, without having to brick a phone, or without using another emulator. So this is just going to GitHub, cloning the thing, and a setup of 3 steps. And the person who did that is Jeff, who's in the audience here as well, over there. So if you have any problem with that, he's happy to repair them for you immediately. So you can see the interface here is much like any other phone. So you lock it up, and you have your stuff there. You have your calculator, you have the browser, you got camera access, you got your emails, you got a dialer, because it's really useful to have a phone to call other people. It's quite impressive. But you can hear these sounds, and actually these sounds are generated in JavaScript as well. And nothing in there is proprietary technology. All of that is web technology. So I've got my contacts there of people that I keep talking to constantly. And you can set up new ones if you wanted to, but most of the time I'm happy with the people that I'm talking to all the time. So you can always go back with escape, much like you could do with the other one. You've got a gallery where you got your images, and all the scrolling and things, no pictures, great. All the scrolling and things are done with WebGL, so we have a predictive environment and a predictive performance. So if you show the phone quickly as well, if you wanted to, so to show that we're not just showing you great screenshots here and emulators, this is really running on the phone at the moment. So this is my Chromebook at home. Let's start the camera quickly. That's not what I wanted. There we go. Cam. Cool.
So, do we have visuals? Well, we kind of have visuals. We have a big glare, which nobody can see, but anyway, that is the phone. And so we simply log in like this. And we have, oh, that's nice. Very nice.
So we can totally prove that it's a phone. You can come to us later and play with them as well.
Yeah.
So it does work. And it's quite impressive that when it started, when B2G Gecko came out and it was just an empty repository on GitHub, I was one of the people like, yeah, we're never going to release that. But all of a sudden I've got a phone in my hand and it works. And everything in there, which if you look at the source code, you can see as well, like you can go to Sublime here. Where's my Sublime? I closed my Sublime. Fair enough. But the source code is all HTML in itself. So let's try the Chris H. Gaia Rocking. Live coding on stage. Gotta love it. Sublime text. So you got the Gaia interfaces here, you got your apps in there, the browser, the calendar, all the things that I showed you. And all these things are just basically HTML pages. If you just look at the stuff in there, you can see the source code, you have your manifest defining what these apps are, you have a style for each of them. So these are just websites that you build and then you actually set as an app on your phone instead of having to go through other technologies and writing to an SDK that you have to pay money for. So, moving on. So what is the technology behind B2 Gecko? How can we make these wonderful phones that just glare into a camera and you don't see what they are? It's the same stuff that you actually use to build websites with, and hopefully, and it just is nothing new that, yeah, you know my name, it's all good. Under the hood, it's basically Gecko, and what does Gecko mean in this case?
Gecko is basically, there it goes again. You know our names. We love each other here, so it's all good. Yeah, basically Gecko is the same rendering engine that's sitting below Firefox. So if you, for example, are looking at the source code of any web page, that's rendered by a rendering engine that actually presents you the visuals and the graphics in the browser. And we basically boot to one of those, and it shows the content.
And it's not Firefox, it's Gecko the engine itself, so you don't have the interface, you don't have the things that are normally annoying in apps that you have like a toolbar up there that is not part of your app. So what we did with B2G Gecko was actually looking at mobile devices and saying like, okay, this is unfair. How many of this stuff is not available for us as web developers? And when it started, all of this was red. So these red and green dots next to the different parts of the mobile phone is, do we have an open API for that in JavaScript that is available? And it is a standard or standard recommendation. So this is connected directly to Mozilla. So if one of these get fixed, then it becomes green. So if one of you has a time layer on and you want to fix some of those, please do, because it's all open source. So we saw all these things in these phones that weren't available to us, and it was just unfair. Because it's a web device. Everybody talks about HTML5. People go up on stage and say, ooh, Flash is dead and HTML5 is the best thing. And then you're like, okay, I write an HTML5 app for your device. Yeah, you can't get access to the geolocation, you can't get access to the orientation. And we said, no, I need to. And that's why we wrote all these specs and all these implementations right now. So what are the things that we actually wrote and we made open as standards that we follow with Gecko, but other people can put into other systems as well. So here's a few favorite APIs that we have.
The touch events are basically very similar to the ones that you'll see on your iPhone or your Android. So multi-touch, panning, zooming, all of those things. We now have an API for that.
The next thing, of course, the camera, because every phone is a camera, and it's a really cool idea to basically get these pictures and do something with them. Say you could put some filters on them and then sell that company for $1 billion. I don't know if that's already been done, but you can try it out. So with B2G Gecko, we have full access to the camera, and as soon as you got the camera data, the image data, then you can put it in a canvas, and you can do whatever you want with it. Because canvas, canvas gives you pixel level access to images, and you can just bit shift those pixels and change different colors and different effects out there. There's a lot of HTML5 demos out there that actually show you how to do these effects, and one of them is webcam toy, uses WebRTC. There's like 500 filters on your live video, and it's pretty cool to do that kind of things. And that is possible in web technologies these days.
And who would have a mobile phone without the ability to send SMS? So now we have an SMS API that lets us send text with JavaScript.
Which is quite important. A lot of people like, man, SMS, what's the point of that? But there's also billing systems, for example, that run on SMS. Or the other day, my Chromebook, I tried to update the data plan of my SIM card in there, and I could only do it with SMS. So I actually had to get a SIM card out of the Chromebook, put it in the phone, and put money on there. If the Chromebook had that API, you don't have to do that, which is pretty good as well. Next, of course, is telephony API, because you want to call people. And it's just incredible that now, without having to go through a service like Twilio or other services out there, I can, from the phone in JavaScript, say a MOS telephony call telephone number, and the phone will actually start calling this number, and you can actually talk to people on your phone, which is a good thing. But it hasn't been possible in open web technologies before we've done
Similarly, to mobile phones, there's a vibrator API, which makes your phone buzz with JavaScript. So, for example, if you have games, if you have alerts or messages or some kind of incoming thing, you want to be able to know that it's there. So we vibrate.
And we used to call it the vibrator API, but there were so many jokes about it, so we actually had to rename it to the vibration API to solve that from happening. Another big thing that's coming up, of course, is NFC, near-field communication. I've got, for example, a mobile phone from Google here that has NFC enabled, and they do these like wallet things in America. And I've got business cards that they just touch to the phone and get the information in there. So that's one of the next things we want to support. The iPhone 5 is rumored to have that as well. And I think it's incredibly powerful to just basically touch your phone onto something and get information into it. Lots of security problems with that as well, but we're working on those as well, but just we want to get access first.
So as for web Bluetooth, if you have a headset that you want to pair with your device, or you have a gaming controller that you want to pair with the device, we are able to do that.
Which is rather important, because there is for HTML5 gaming, you will not realize how much different it is out of a sudden to play a game with a controller than just with your keyboard or with your mouse. All of a sudden you feel much more in the game, and both Chrome and us have a game controller API, which now works over USB, but over Bluetooth it would be even better with my phone. And I can really get a keyboard and start writing on my phone and using it as a real interface, because nobody wants to type on my phone. Actually, API was something they were like, why would we need that? Because the phone has it in itself, but as our whole phone is written in JavaScript, we need a battery API. And it's actually a really interesting thing to do as well. When you have, for example, a game, and you know the next level will be massive WebGL with 3D things and eating your battery, and it would be a good idea to test first if the battery's already at 2% left, and then tell people like, we don't want you to lose your data, please save it first with your batteries on. So you just have a simple way to read the battery state in JavaScript now as well.
As for the full screen API, just like with the native, with another phone, you're able to not only enlarge, for example, the browser window, but any element within the screen as well. So if you have a control or, for example, a character in a game or something you want to make, you're able to do that now as well.
Which was a big security issue as well, because Chrome had the full screen API quite some while ago, and the problem is like browsers nowadays are written in HTML, CSS, and JavaScript themselves. So I could turn your page into a full screen page and give you a fake browser that looks exactly like the real browser and get all your data that you're actually surfing to. So we have to make sure that there's a question first, like, this is now going into full screen, so make sure you're okay with that. So it seems to be annoying for the user, but it's very, very important in terms of security. The other big thing we have with full screen API is the mouse lock API. Because when you go full screen in a 3D game and you use a normal mouse, you would end up at the end of the screen instead of turning the camera. So with the mouse lock API, you don't have your normal screen movement anymore with the cursor, but instead you rotate the camera in a 3D game, which is something that was not possible before either. But that was part of what we learned with the full screen API. Which also brings us to screen orientation. There's nothing more annoying if out of a sudden I need to turn my phone without it telling me. So, and in the past, screen orientation on Android, for example, wasn't readable in the browser, in the Android browser, in Chrome now it is. And in Firefox, it has been since Firefox 4. And the screen orientation API, Gecko gives you like 3 angles, like alpha, beta, gamma, and it also tells you what the original orientation of that device is. So if you're on a tablet, then it will tell you just the natural movement that a user has is to have this in like portrait mode rather than in landscape mode. So it tells you what this device is best for using, so it optimizes your images for these kind of things.
So one thing of very good graphics that you need to have is the ability to render hardware-accelerated 2D and 3D graphics directly in the browser. Enter WebGL, which enables us to do exactly that. Which is really cool about WebGL is that it actually there's very little learning curve for somebody who has already worked with OpenGL to adapt this technology and take it to use.
Which is good for the games market, because most of the game companies will not come up to us and say, like, oh yeah, we really want to learn HTML5, CSS, and JavaScript now, because we have all these 3D developers. But with WebGL, we can basically say, you want to re-educate your people just can write OpenGL shaders, and you work in WebGL as well, and you can just convert your games that easily. And let's not kid ourselves. Game companies want to make money, and they don't want to rewrite from scratch. They just want to convert their games onto a new platform. That's why WebGL is incredibly important. And the work that the Cross Group and Google and us have done there are quite impressive. So all of that is pointless if you don't have any apps on your phone. Like, phones are there for apps. Let's not kid ourselves. Nobody goes to the phone, starts their browser, and starts browsing on it. Well, I do, but I'm not normal. Normal end users out there just want to play that game and like delete it 5 minutes later and buy a new one. And it's just amazing how much money is being made with like the fart apps and things like that. So there's lots of opportunity in the apps market, and it's easy to build and to make money with. So we thought, okay, we have to have a market for that as well, which is nothing new. Every company has their own market out there. But we thought we take it a bit further and make it more open in terms of what you can put in this market and how your apps are running in that market.
So actually, what's so compelling about this? Well, I can write a web app to be run in Firefox or even Chrome, God help you, and it can run on a boot to Gecko device. It can run in a browser or an emulator. So I can literally write once, run anywhere.
Yeah, like Java almost 2 years ago. This time we can make it a much simpler and easier way than not like having a computer go off just by building something. And it's built again on open technologies, and what we already use. We just looked at the market and see what people do, and there was this big drive of web developers who want to build applications. Because we always got, I've been web developing for 15 years, I always got frustrated. We're like, I want to do this, no, I can't do that. I want to do this, no, the browser's not allowed to do that. So we gave the new features in there to actually make the browser much more of an app platform than it was before.
What's, again, compelling about this is that there's a freedom of choice. We are, again, putting devs and consumers in the driver's seat for this experience, not the stack owners like iOS or the Android SDK, but the actual devs and the consumers can really drive this thing.
Which, of course, brings more benefits, but also brings more power to you and more responsibility. And that's the good thing about it. I think I don't want to wait for an SDK to support a certain technology when the technology is available in the browser or already out there as a standard. So in an open web environment, you can do these things without having to wait like, yeah, we finally can access the orientation. So this is just a mock-up of what the market looks like. It's actually available now for developers. You can sign up for it and you can start building your first apps and putting them in there. And we have a review process, and you just have any HTML5 app that runs in Chrome, runs in Safari, and actually run that one as well. And that's the good thing about that, isn't it? It's like, how do you get started? How would you start creating an app?
Well, apps are basically websites. They use exactly the same technology as creating a website. So if you create a website, you can create an app, create a manifest for an app, deploy it to the web store, you know, and there it goes. Which takes us to the next thing. The only thing you need to do to turn a website into an app is create an application manifest. And this is what one looks like.
Yeah, so it's just a JSON object that tells us what the version of the game is, what the name of the app is, a description of it, the icons that you have, 16, 48, 100, 128 pixels, not like iOS where you have to have 1024 pixels right now, where most of the time your icons are bigger than your app. Which developers go in there to see moving fast.
Ooh, sorry.
The developer name and actually the URL, so you can actually get a manifest file from there. And install is allowed from, so this is important as well. So you cannot just have an app that installs from anywhere on the web to inject malicious code. You actually have to validate with your URL against it. So if you build an app, you need a URL. Localhost works, but it's better if you do it with the real URL at the moment. And default
sorry.
English here, but you can do it publicly Brazilian.
My mistake. There's a couple of important things to remember when creating an application manifest. Christian,
yes.
Tell us what those are.
Actually, the most important thing to remember is that the manifest is sent with the right header. And there's not many things out there. You have a same domain policy. That's what I said before that. You can only install things from the domain where your manifest is on. You cannot pull requests from somewhere else, because we can't say if these are going to be tainted or if these are going to be the real data. So everything has to come from the same domain, so your game is connected to a domain. But that was the same with the Facebook app, that was the same with the Yahoo app, which 2 or 3 people in this world built on. And it was quite interesting to see that people are amazed that these things have to be done, but security is very important in this case. The other thing is also that you have to send it with a certain manifest plus JSON, XWeb app, HTTP header, but anybody who runs a server or local host actually can do that quite easily in PHP or Node.js or any other language that you want out there. We have a manifest validator at appmanifest.org. So if you're not sure if everything is alright, you can just copy and paste or point to the app manifest there and it will tell you if it's in the right format or not. But it's really a small JSON object. There's not many things you can do wrong. So how do you install an app? So there's 2 things there. You're going to go through the marketplace, which is a simple way of doing it. But as we said, we're going to have open web apps. We're going to go further. We're doing something different with that. And we're allowing you to actually install them from anywhere. So in the API itself, this is just navigating on most apps, install manifest URL. So you're just pointing to that URL. So you can put that into any web page out there and make it install desktop instead of having to go to the marketplace. This is basically what Air has promised us back then with this quick update button and things like that, and then they stopped supporting Linux. We still do. So that's all good for the moment. So this is what it would look like then to install them.
When you start an install method, it's triggering an installation dialog, and you can see what's up there on the corner. Do you want to install? Name your app from this site, Marketplace Mozilla.org, and you click install, and you see there's a little drop-down menu there. So that can probably be configured with various other options as well that you might want to do. On Windows, a desktop shortcut is actually created for the app you installed, and it will also be in the start menu as well.
So this is part of a native experience, and that's the main thing that people are always like, web apps are not as cool because they're in the browser and they've got online toolbars and stuff out there. So we make a normal install with WebRT, Web Runtime as we call it, which is another standard we have out there, which allows you to go full screen and to have a real application that looks like an application. And on Windows it goes on the desktop and you have your icon. On Mac OSX, it's in your application folder. It's just not a random bookmark somewhere. It looks like a real application out there, and it just runs in the browser, but the end user does not really need to know.
So it's really easy to use, and you don't need to do anything special as a developer to enable it in your app. Whenever a user requests to install an app, it can be installed natively by default.
And there's full disclosure. You see what the game is, you see where it comes from. So if it says something else than actually the app name that you know that the game came from, then you know there's somebody trying to inject some code that really should not be the case.
You can launch from the dock or the desktop or the home screen. If you install apps using WebRT, there's no difference from any other native application that you have on your computer. They're installed in the standard native application location and can be launched in the same way that you launch any other app.
That's true. And we said before we got full screen, so that's totally fine. So the whole problem that people said that games are never going to be as cool because they're inside the browser, we don't have that problem anymore. You can even have that option with Flash, and you can have to send it out as an executable with Flash. But in the browser, we have the same issues that it was just a browser game, it wasn't a real game. But seeing a game that actually, if you look Sinius here, for example, this is what it looks like in the end with WebRT. You just wrote an HTML wrapper and a manifest file, and you have a full window. It's like any other app that you have out there, and you don't realize that it actually is just a web page that has been made better.
So there's a whole bunch of ways you can start using and testing Boot Gecko today.
First is Firefox 90. So Firefox 90 supports the Boot Gecko builds, so you can actually use the browser to build your tools, and you have all the benefits that you have from the browser. You have development tools in there, and you can basically just resize the browser to simulate the different resolutions, which now is the responsive mode and development tools in Firefox as well, so you don't even have to resize the main browser window. This is all possible inside the browser for you. And there's actually a build on GitHub for that, so you can just have a web server that runs as a server, a Node.js server on your machine, and in Firefox you actually simulate the Gecko environment as your browser, so you don't need to install anything extra out there. That's the guy at Nike, that's what it looks like. It's just like a browser with the window in there, and there's nothing magical about it. It's just interesting that you can use your browser instead of having to go through an extra event out there. The OSX Simulator is what I showed you earlier. Just like have these, you just do a make run from the folder, and then you have the full screen like in the right size of a mobile phone on your desktop, and you can actually just change the HTML files, rebuild with make run, and then you can see the changes. How do you do that? The easiest way is actually to just go to your command line and do a git clone from the Git repository, go into that folder, do a submodule in it, make setup, run B2G with either by make, go to directory and make run, or on find it, you actually have a launcher button that you can click as well. So it's like a real application as an SDK environment, just all on GitHub, which is pretty sweet as well. Or you have a simulator.
You can basically do like we did from GitHub and pull down the source for a B2G simulator. We call it emulator. Simulator, you say potato. And run Gaia using this application. This isn't Firefox, but it behaves similar to the on-device experience that you have in B2G. Of course, analogous to that, you have naturally the device itself. This is where I spend all of my days and nights pulling and building for devices and testing those like crazy. This is, of course, the most difficult option. Is only recommended if you're either completely crazy and you have a spare device by someone who knows what they're doing.
So if you got like millions of mobile phones lying around and you don't know what to do with, there's always an option to try one and put a Gecko on out there. But it's really more interesting to use the emulators for now to get in the world out there. In the end, you won't want to build B2G, you want to build apps for B2G, right? Because that's what people will have in Brazil in quite some months' time. They will have B2G devices, and you could be the people that actually have the first apps out there just by writing some HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. One warning, and I know everybody of you at this conference will be very, very heartbroken about this. There's no emulator for Windows yet, so you can't use the Windows 7 or Windows 8. But you can use the anti-Ubuntu and actually run Windows in that degrees in your computers fast, and do these kind of Ubuntu things as well. So it's Linux and OSX only at the moment, but we thought an open environment is a good idea for OSX is about Linux. So how can you contribute to Gecko? How can you be part of this? And there are several ways of doing that.
You can join the B2G mailing list. There's Dev Gaia, there's Dev B2G. You can ask us for the details of those. Of course, you can also talk to us. We live on Mozilla IRC, in the Gaia, in the B2G channels. Of course, we'd love to have you in the QA channels as well.
I love when QA people ask other people who do QA for them. I'm not kidding. As an engineer, every time you meet a tester, buy them a coffee or hug them. These are the people that have the worst job on this planet. Because every time they do their job, they annoy us. Every time they find a mistake that we have overlooked, we're like, what is faster? But that's their job. They're there to break things. They're like mythbusters of web development. And it's really, really cool that we have these people like John look at B2G stuff, because it's not fun to build lots of phones and flash them and then 20 minutes later find out there's one bug in there. That's not fun to do. But other people who don't live in life, that's wonderful. And
hey.
Yeah. So, why is this all cool? I mean, like, yeah, we got WebOS on HP as well. They promise the same thing. Well, first of all, where was it up? If anybody knows about the open web, we do. And that was interesting when I talked to friends of mine in Telefonica who actually are engineers that work on the same idea. Telefonica wanted to release the open web device anyways. So they said, like, we want to have an open web device with HTML5 on it. And then 2 days later, after they had their meetings about this, we released like, hey, let's put to Gecko and we want to build a mobile phone that is only HTML5 based. And Telefonica was like, We cannot compare with Mozilla when it comes to open source stuff. And so they came to us and said, like, do you want to partner with somebody? And we're like, exclusive, yeah. So we actually just started working together, and that's why this thing is happening. And there's so many things possible there. If you think about a phone interface that's written in HTML, JavaScript, and CSS, you can do so many things that are impossible somewhere else. Say you want to have a children's phone that has 3 buttons. Call mom, call school, get a bus, or get a taxi or something like that. On iOS, forget it. You have to learn an app for that the kid has to start, and these kind of things that they are never going to do there. On Android, maybe there's a possibility, I'm not quite sure. On B2G Gecko, if you were a company and wanted to make a phone for kids, that's writing an HTML page and putting it in B2G. The home page screen is another HTML page with a manifest file. There's nothing else there that is not even on the app. So the operating system itself is an app in the system that runs apps. In a different thread, disconnected from the other, so there's no security problems. But you have the opportunity to build your own mobile interface on an OS level with HTML technologies. I would recognize which SIM card you have in there and give you a different interface for when you're in Brazil, when you're in England, when you're in America. Like, I can automatically route all my calls through Skype when I'm in America, so you don't have to pay the roaming costs, for example. That is all possible. And with WebRTC and other systems coming in, chatting with each other over the phone will be possible as well. And I just love the idea of empowerment as a web developer for once being able to call the shots and not being asked to open a browser and then being the confinement of the browser. So you can be part of the next interfaces out there that people just think about right now. And if you have ideas that are completely off-kilter, it will be possible in Android, possible in HTML, then they can be done on the Gecko device.
So the question is, how can you help us? How can you contribute to this wonderful and bright future of which Christian speaks? You can code, you can write apps, you can contribute to Gaia, you can contribute to B2G if you're a platform developer. Of course, it's very important that we get as many people as possible using the thing as well. So you can use the marketplace, you can use the web API, write apps that try out the APIs, that consume the APIs. You can use B2G Gecko as well. Of course, when you do all of this, it's very important that you give us your feedback. So give your input on the APIs, request features from us, test as much as you can, and log the bugs.
That's basically all we have for. So thanks. I'm on Twitter. The slides are already on GitHub with all the notes in it. Slides on SlideShare with all the notes in them. We have 3 people here all in these wonderful orange vests. I didn't wear them because I didn't want to scare you, because my hair with that vest together is just not working.
Glows in the dark.
A few of them have phones with them, so you can play with them as well. They're rather often ready, so things break, but you're open source guys, you know that. And it's just a matter of like playing with that stuff and talking to us about it, because we really want to get the phones out. And as Mozilla, our job is not to sell phones. Our job is not to bring a mobile phone or OS out that kills Android and iOS. That's not going to happen. What we want to do with the open web device and the partnerships that we do with them and B2G Gecko is bring the phone to people in the web, to people that can't afford the web on their phones yet. So an Android device and an iOS device are really, really expensive. A B2G Gecko device will be much more affordable, and it will bring the web interactivity to people out there that need it. Because in a lot of places, and Brazil is just the start, in Africa, for example, people do everything via phones. They don't have desktop computers, they don't have iPads. Retina display is not a problem for them yet. They just want to have connectivity and be able to talk to people. And when you see how many people rely day to day on the web to talk to their families, to learn new things that weren't possible before that, and I think it's unfair that you have to be rich to get a phone that is connected to the web. And this is what we wanted to disrupt with B2G Gecko, and we're very much on the way, and we need your help to go there all the way. So thanks very much.